Okay, we're back. So that did a little editing on the first segment there. So this is a difficult subject to kind of just like dive into. So let's just see what we can get from this diagram I put together. Let's look at this. This is what the first thing I had to get straight. We're going to talk about seventh chords, and I knew that this makes sense and it's correct what I've written over on the right, but I knew when I read it this morning it ain't going to make sense. So that's how it is with guitar. I get to a certain point where I can make a rule. The next day, first I got to figure out what I was saying, and that's most important, the jargon. So let's look at it and then see if it works. Seventh chords start on a modal note and play every other scale note. Well, that's easy. We did that. Just there it is. Every other note in that scale. C, skip D to E, skip F to G, skip A to B. Okay. Let's talk about E minor seventh. Low E minor 7th, E, skip F to G, skip A to B, skip C to D, E minor 7th, low. So that's skip every other note within that scale. We also talked about extending it, just skip every other note on the keyboard itself. That's another concept because we're talking about where are the notes on the staff. Okay, and remember that middle C is in between the two staffs. Okay, so really, we never really have to see a bunch of notes on top of the bass clef, and we don't have to see a bunch of notes on the bottom of the treble clef because middle C is the only line in between the two staffs. I'm sure Beethoven and Bach would disagree, and that's just how versatile their music was. So here we go. Seventh chords, play modal chord under its relative chord. So what I'm talking about is very important for this lesson, for me to set this definition that I made that says that a relative can also be a relative major. Okay, so everyone knows that we have in the C shape, its relative, okay, is a minor 6. All right, but I'm talking about, so if we just played on the piano, C, and then its relative is a minor 6. But if we have, let's say we have a D minor now, why can't its relative, just by raising the 6 similarly, you see, looking back at the root triad, root 3 5, if we raise the 5th to the 6th and then bring that 6 down an octave, we have its relative 6th. Well, why not in D minor? If we have a D minor, which is 2, 4, 6 in the scale, in the root scale, we raise that 6 to a 7th, but let's look at it as a local. So instead of 2, 4, 6, we're going to look at it as 1, 3, 5 in that D minor scale, right? Raise that 5 to a 6th, and then take that octave down. What do we have? Its relative is now a half diminished. Okay, and if we go to E, it even gets crazier. If we go to E minor, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we've got 1, 3, 5 of E minor. If we raise its 5th to that 6, which is just augmenting it, bring that 6 down, we have a relative major to the root. So when I talk about the relative in this chart, I'm talking about whatever chord quality it is. So for 6 chords, So for seventh chords, play a modal chord under its relative chord. So Ionian's a modal chord. The relative under it is A minor. D minor is a modal chord. The relative under it is B half diminished. E minor is a relative chord. The relative under it, I just call this, the way I call it is B. We did the B minor. So let's do E minor. The relative under it is C major. F major, its relative, of course, is the D minor. G major, its relative, of course, is E minor. But lesser known, A minor, its relative is F the fourth. And last but not least, the half diminished, its relative is the G7, is the 5 chord. Okay, 5 major. Major is the important word. So its relative is, that's how we're defining it. So that's how to play a 7th chord. Play the modal chord under its relative chord. Okay, so if we want to play a C major 7th, we're going to consider, this is the modal chord. You play that under its relative chord. Alright, which would be what? Its relative chord would be E minor 7th. See, the relative 6th of C is A minor. So I'm playing with words there. It's not quite important to know that right now. So the jargon is very important. Let's not get tripped up on it. I told you I knew it would confuse me this morning. And good morning to you all. And if you have a chance, like and subscribe to my channel, Andy's Free Guitar Chart videos. We have fun learning guitar, and I've made over 300 guitar charts, which I've got videos for most of them, and they're all on YouTube in different playlists. So let's talk about 6 chords. For each mode, sixth is the new root of the relative chord. Aha! Another rule that I stumbled onto in my sleep yesterday. And I said, I'll remember it. But in the middle of the night, Princess woke me up and I had to make the chart. By the way, it's cold in here. It's getting cold again. We got some cold weather. It's 39 degrees and raining outside. So it's a good day to do a lesson. For each mode, its local 6 is the new root of the relative chord. So if we have a C, C, E, G, if we raise that to the 6th, C, E, A, the 6th becomes the new root of the relative 6th. If we have a D minor, raise it to its local 6th, that 7th now becomes the new root of its relative chord, which is B half diminished. For E minor, raise its 5th, that becomes the root of the original key, becomes C major, right there. F, the 4th, raise it from 5 to 6, C goes to D, that becomes the root of the new relative. So the relative of F is D minor. Same thing with G, raise it up. That's the new relative. Now A minor, raise its relative 5th to a 6. This is a very interesting little augmentation in the A minor scale, because it keeps it in the mode, and then that becomes the relative of A minor becomes the F major. The relative of B half diminished, raise that up, becomes the G major. Okay, and back to the Ionian. So that's the rule for the 6 chords. And I had to come up with something for the 7th, for the suspended 4th and suspended 2nd. So with the suspended fourth chord.